Hello again, and today we're going to finalize our lecture on analyzing text and the stylistic potential of text by turning to yet another point, and this is analyzing literature. And first and foremost, analyzing fiction, but it could also be helpful in analyzing other types of literature. And today we're going to have a look at a few categories of literary analysis. And we're going to rely on Peterson's AP Success, English Language and Composition. They offer a very nice scheme of analyzing literature. So the first point that we're going to consider is the mode of discourse. Mode of discourse is essentially a type of text by its purpose and also by some formal characteristics, how it is arranged and which linguistic aspects predominate. Well, there are four main types of modes of discourse, and the identification of these modes of discourse goes back in time to basically classical times. And they are narrative, description, drama, and argument or persuasion. I'm quite sure that you're familiar with most of them, but let's have a look at what they mean in literary analysis. So a narrative is a type of text, is a mode of discourse, which implies a sequential description of events. That means this is a description, but not a description of scenery or landscape. It is a description of action, of a chain of events. And therefore, it is usually full of verbs, and the presence of verbs which describe something in dynamics, dynamically describe it, is a hallmark of a narrative. So it usually contains some focal points, the events, and how they change one another. Here is an example of a piece of narrative from Three Men in a Boat, where the author sets the scene for the whole book. There were four of us, George and William, Samuel Harris, and myself, and Montmorency. We were sitting in my room, smoking and talking about how bad we were. Bad from a medical point of view, I mean, of course. What we see here is that the author introduces the scene by, the simple verb to be. There were four of us, and then describes in the past continuous what they were doing. We were sitting in the room, smoking and talking. And after that, the author goes on to tell us what they were talking about and how their meeting went. So it's a narrative or a narration. Description. Description is also a type of enumeration, but unlike a narrative, it is mostly static. It does not contain these dynamic or at least highly dynamic elements. And usually it is full of nouns and adjectives, not verbs. And if the verbs are there, they're used to describe something which is static. Or some stative verbs, or normal verbs which describe the scene. The main message, or rather the main function of a description, is to conjure up, to create a picture in our mind. From Picnic Point to Old Windsor Lock is a delightful bit of the river. A shady road dotted here and there with dainty little cottages runs by the bank up to the Bells of Ouseley, a picturesque inn, as most upriver inns are, and a place where a very good glass of ale may be drunk, so Harry says, and on a matter of this kind you can take Harris's word. So what we see here is a description of a landscape, and as we see, any book is usually never written in only one mode of discourse. There are elements of all these four modes of discourse in a big text like Three Men in a Boat by Jerome. So maybe to round up with the first two modes of discourse, we have to say that both of them are descriptions, but one of them is a dynamic description and the other one is a static description. One more type of modes of discourse is drama. Here we have to clarify that here we do not mean a literary genre. This is not a drama, not necessarily a drama, which is a play or a tragedy or so, well, something. It is not an opposition to tragedy, for example, or to comedy. Drama, in this case, as a category of literary analysis, implies a mode of discourse which looks like a play. That means it contains an exchange of words and thoughts between characters. And, well, basically any dialogue or polylogue well, functions like a piece of drama in a bigger text. So, for example, again, a quotation from a fragment from Three Men in a Boat. "Hi, come further in," I said, shaking him by the shoulder. "You're a bit overboard." "Oh my, I wish I was the only answer I could get, and then I had to leave him. Well, so here the introduction of this exchange comes as a piece of drama. And finally, one more mode of discourse is argument or persuasion. The main function of this mode of discourse, evidently, is the argumentation of your position, giving arguments to support your position. Persuasion, when you persuade somebody to do something, well, give rational reasons for something, and to convince somebody of the truthfulness of something. That is, when you want to make somebody believe something or do something. And usually it is arranged as a monologue, of the author or a monologue of the character who gives his or her arguments to the reader. And, well, for example, this fragment, again, from Three Men in a Boat, is a lyrical digression with a piece of argument where the author is trying to convince the reader that we should live simply. We should not accumulate too many treasures, too many things, and simple living is good. It is lumberman, all lumber, chlam in Russian. Throw it overboard. It makes the boat so heavy to pull. You nearly faint at the oars. It makes it so cumbersome and dangerous to manage. So he compares our life journey to a journey in a boat. And when you travel by boat, you don't need too many things in a boat. Throw the lumber over, man. Let your boat of life be light, packed with only what you need, a homely home and simple pleasures, one or two friends worth the name, someone to love, and someone to love you. So, as I have said earlier, to round up this discussion of modes of discourse, I have to remember that any big text, any piece of literature, usually contains all these four types of discourse, of modes of discourse: narration, description, drama, and argument. The second point, or the second category of literary analysis, is the title. If there is a title, what does it tell you? We have to ask ourselves. What does it suggest about the subject or the theme, meaning of the passage? And the subject of title is an interesting one because it is a condensed text, сгущенный текст, and the first interpretation offered by the author himself. Therefore, it is important to look at the title and before you interpret the whole text. And the title may convey different things. For example, it may give a glimpse of the main conflict, like in Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, where the main conflict erupts between the pride of one character and the prejudice of the other. Very often the title contains the name of the main hero or the main object which becomes the center of action in the story. For example, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. It may also show us the setting, like in 1984 by George Orwell, where the story is set in 1984. It is well known that he wrote this book in 1948, and then he just changed the two last digits to create the future, the setting in the future. And it can also be a formula of the message. For example, A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway, where he describes this story of the horrors of war and the future, or rather the desired farewell to arms. So it's like his message to the reader. Well, any of these can also be a symbol. The hero, the object, the setting, even the conflict. For example, The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams, where this zoo of toy zoo of toy animals made out of glass, small glass figurines, is a symbol of the fragile soul of the main character, which is smashed by a careless gesture, or could be smashed by a careless gesture. Now, the third point that we are going to consider is the theme and the message. What is the theme, or the central idea? What other themes are brought up? And here we have to remember that there are several themes that could be brought up. What motives are dominant? How is the theme conveyed? And what symbols are used? So let's have a look at each one of these one by one. First of all, let's look at the definitions of these key terms. Themes are the fundamental and often universal ideas explored in a literary work. Motives are recurrent structures, contrasts, or literary devices that can help to develop the text's major themes. And the leitmotif is the initially this term was introduced in music, is a recurring melody that played along with the character, or allusion to a theme whenever one or the other appeared on stage. And in literature studies, this is a recurring theme. This leitmotif in literature works like this leitmotif in music. So whenever it may work like this leitmotif in music, that some character or some object or something is attached to some particular theme. To give an example of a theme, let's think of any literary piece of literature. So it can explore the themes of friendship, of war, of social conflicts. Well, for example, in Tribute by Alfred Coppard, which is devoted to the story of two families, one of them a rich one and the other one a poorer one, and their contribution to the victory in the Second World War from the English perspective. And here various themes are employed. Well, one of them is, of course, the theme of social injustice, where the richer ones do not have to sacrifice their lives, and the poorer people have to give up their lives in war. Well, the second theme is war itself and the horrors of war. The third theme is the theme of real friendship and real love, which cannot be bought, and which is expressed in not in money, not in caring for things, but in genuine affection for one another. So at least three themes are employed, but many others as well. What motives are dominant? So let's look at motives. Once again, they are recurrent structures, contrasts, or literary devices that can help to develop the text's major themes. So this is a smaller category of analysis than a theme. Theme is very broad, and fundamental motives are smaller. But they are also recurrent structures. Well, we are familiar with the term motive in visual arts as well. For example, here on this slide you can see the floral and animal motifs for wallpaper. So as we see here, this is a recurring structure which we see somewhere, which creates this thread which punctuates the story, or in this case punctuates the picture, and makes us remember it time and again. And well, a leitmotif again is a big motive, basically. So it's somewhere between a theme and a motive. She ends up waiting tables, and that, along with the dishwashing, establishes the book's main leitmotif. Time and again, she is pulled really back to the world of food and hospitality. Well, let's practice with identifying also the message, because the theme and its subtypes of motives and leitmotifs are one thing, and the message is another thing. It is basically something that the idea or the thought that the author wants to convey to us, and we have to understand. It is, and again, a message is usually imperative. It makes you either believe in something, or believe something, or to do something, or to become something. Well, let's look at this famous poem by Robert Frost. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to know that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. I'm sure that you will need more time to take in the meaning of this poem. Please do so. You may pause and think about the meaning of this poem, but I will go on. And let's look at the themes which are employed here. Well, of course, the leitmotif, the theme of the poem is the destructive things, right? Fire, ice, destruction of the world. And these are the main the main motives are the, or even the leitmotifs, is the apocalypse, the end of the world in fire, or the end of the world in ice. So these are the two main motives which run through the poem. And but what is the message? We've identified the themes, we have identified the motives or the leitmotifs. But what is the message? And here is a small quiz. Please think about what is the message of the story. Desire is a hot and inflammable passion that works in us like fire. 2. Fire is a symbol of desire, ice is the symbol of hate. Desire and hate, like fire and ice, are almost equally destructive forces. Number 3. And finally, the world will perish because of desire and hate among people. Now, I suggest that you also pause the video now and think about the best option to describe the message of the story, of this poem. But of course, I'm going to go on and tell you the answer right now. Of course, it is number 3. Desire and hate, like fire and ice, are almost equally destructive forces. So the poem is actually not about the end of the world, which is only here to provide the background for this metaphor of the human emotions and feelings. And the author maintains that desire and hate, very strong emotions in people, they are like fire and ice, and they are almost equally destructive, or they may be equally destructive. And that's where the theme of the apocalypse comes in, again, as a source of metaphor. And finally, as it was mentioned on the first slide about this section, symbols are objects, characters, figures, or colors used to represent abstract ideas or concepts, and usually they work, they can work as those things that provide the motives and leitmotifs. Well, for example, in the famous book Fahrenheit 451, there is the section called the hearth and the salamander. The hearth is ochag in Russian, and the salamander. And it tells us about, I'm not going to retell the whole story, of course, but it tells us about the fight of some future governments against books and against education and against thinking, free thinking. And we see a fireman whose job is to burn books. You also see an old lady who refuses to part with her favorite books and who stays in the flat which is burned because it is full of books, and she dies. And of course there is a lot of symbolism here because the salamander is an animal which is, and you see an icon, a small image of a salamander in the bottom left-hand corner, has been traditionally associated with the ability not to perish in fire. And this lady is like this salamander, and salamander is also the badge on these future firemen's coats. So in a way, they are like salamanders. They do not perish in fire, but actually this woman is also like a salamander because she doesn't perish and her soul doesn't, her books do not perish in fire. And then later on we find out that the fireman himself comes to think of the value of books, and he also becomes a salamander who is surrounded by this hostile regime that is fighting against education, but he manages to survive. And the hearth is here, of course, as a reference to his difficult family position, which is because the hearth is the symbol of home. So we have this very complicated complex of images where where fire plays an important symbol of many things. And finally, the setting. Here we ask ourselves the question, where and when does the selection take place? What details does the writer use to create the setting? Does the setting create a mood or a feeling? Is the setting a symbol for an important idea the writer wants to convey? And does the setting play a role in the central conflict? Well, of course, the setting is very important for fiction, and very often it conveys a mood. For example, in Wuthering Heights, where the action takes place in Yorkshire moors, this very setting points us in the direction of the two different fates, or the two different families who become the center of this plot. And one of the houses is built very high on the hills. There is a lot of strong wind, and these Wuthering Heights are bleak and strict and stringent and rather gloomy. And this is also the atmosphere for the action that is taking place in this house. Whereas another house, or rather the other house, the house of the other family, is situated in the dale, in the valley. It is sunny, it is green, picturesque, and completely different people live there. So the setting helps to also to create these motives. Well, this is a picture of bleak moors, and I think you can appreciate what kind of mood they create. Now we also may differentiate between the temporal and the local setting. So time or space setting. So between time setting and space setting, and also between global and local setting. When we consider time, we can consider the global time setting or the local time setting. For example, In the play Woe from Wit by Gribayadov, the whole action is packed within 24 hours, basically. And this is the local setting. But it's also set in the 19th century, at the beginning of the 19th century, or the turn between the 18th and 19th centuries. And this defines the coloring, the local color. And the space settings may also be global or local. For example, in Woe from Wit, the global setting is Russia, and the local setting is the house of a rich man in Moscow. And if we consider David Copperfield, for example, on the other hand, by Charles Dickens, the time setting is, the global time setting is the 19th century as well, but rather the second half of the 19th century, whereas the local time setting is also much longer than in Woe from Wit. It takes a whole lifespan of the main character. And the space setting, globally it is England, and locally it is situated in many cities and towns of England, like London and others. And of course, there are elements in fiction which help us identify the time setting, and these are period markers. So, for example, if we come across the word bicycle, it is a period marker for some period which is, 19th century and post-19th century, mostly 20th century, but never, 13th century. Or, for example, if we say a gun machine, right? This is also, this marks this period as 20th century. And, some elements of local setting also create local color. So if, for example, we read about Bratwurst, which is fried sausages, we understand that we are in Germany. Or if we come across the word kimono, this is Japan, and things like that. So thank you very much for being with us, and today we looked at categories of analyzing literature, and in particular modes of discourse, title, theme and message, and the setting. Thank you very much.